Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the 1001 Movies podcast. This time I'll be talking about 1972's Red Psalm, directed by Miklos Jancsó.
Munkások vagyunk mi, nincsen szabadságunk, mert szerencse helyett gyász borult reánk. Se baj, éljen a munkás, éljen a jog, éljen a munkás társadalom.
About 20 minutes into watching Red Psalm, I was struck with the realization that I was watching a film that was communicating on a number of different levels. First of all, its story of a group of peasants rising up against the soldiers and their landlords is not told traditionally, but in a manner similar to watching a ballet or an opera. The entire film takes place in a single field on a farm in Hungary in the 1890s, with sweeping long shots over an entourage of a dozen or so characters, together with 1,500 extras. The peasants on the farm, in a series of musical interludes, protest the government and religion and promote ideals of socialism. This may sound ludicrous, but the music in question is not the snappy numbers found in Hollywood films, but what sounds like traditional ballads accompanied by instruments being played on screen. Secondly, the film is a love letter dedicated to socialism, as nearly every line sung by the peasants is in praise or support of socialism and principles that all mouths, not just those of the upper-class landowners, should be fed and treated well for their hard labor. This theme is reflected in the film's title because red, of course, is commonly associated with socialism or communism, and in one haunting yet beautiful scene, a soldier immerses himself in a stream after gunning down several workers. Within a moment, the water turns red around him, and he appears to prostrate himself guiltily. He is obviously being bathed in the blood of his innocent victims, and at the same time seemingly accepting their socialist doctrine. Red Psalm does not merely communicate on a symbolic level, but Jancsó choreographs each scene with people weaving among each other and constantly walking or dancing in or out of the frame. At all times, the extras moving in the background appear to be judging or inspecting the focal point of the action in the foreground, followed by those in the foreground merging into the background to be replaced by new characters in a new scene. None of the characters is given a name or a backstory, and as they move together as an entourage, it's a visual parallel to the ideals being talked about. Studying Jancsó's background, one would expect to find that he was an ardent communist and perhaps an atheist. However, he was surprisingly critical of socialism in Europe at the time the film was made. Although he had begun making a series of short films and documentaries early in his career, Jancsó had gained international recognition in 1965 with The Roundup, and again in 1967 with The Red and the White. Both films, just like Red Psalm, contained themes of revolution. The Red and the White upped the ante even more by showing the stark brutalities of war. Red Psalm earned Jancsó Best Director at the 1972 Cannes Film Festival and was generally regarded as a critical success. It was a commercial success in Hungary, although the authorities tended to be a little critical of the film, which is hardly surprising. Jancsó was arguably Hungary's best contribution to cinema. He died at the ripe old age of 92 in 2014 and continued to make films until 2012. What did I think of it? I was surprised. Here's a film with literally no traditional plot, can arguably be classified as a musical, and involves European politics from the 1800s, a project that I might ordinarily be renaming Snoozefest 1972. Not so. The film is oddly hypnotic, and after you stop watching it to think about it objectively, you realize that the film was made with only 26 shots, or 27 depending on whom you ask. I didn't count them myself. This is quite a feat in and of itself with the number of actors and extras used. As for the lack of plots, there is a plot in there, or rather there are themes, as a film could hardly sustain a plot without characterizations. Indignation with the upper class is obviously brought up often, but so is religion, such as a sequence in which the peasants lock a priest in his church and set it on fire, all the while dancing around the flames and singing. It very much reminded me of The Wicker Man, this scene. In another scene, an elderly man dies after cutting his wrist with a workman's axe, and he collapses in the grain. He is embraced by a young man, perhaps his son, who tears off his shirt to cover the body. As the man's funeral proceeds, the others present the young man with his new, clean white shirt with symbolic red sash. You see, this is just a short little story, but it's carried out with so much elegance, much as I said earlier, like a ballet or an opera, that I couldn't help but be impressed with what I was watching. Red Psalm is indeed unique in form, which is ironic because John Cho was often criticized for being a formalist. Well, that's all I have to say about Red Psalm. Now, tune in next time when I discuss Jean Cocteau's classic 1946 French film Beauty and the Beast, based on the popular fairy tale. And also, of course, if you have any questions, comments, or feel like sending hate mail, please feel free to email me at 1001moviespodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter at 1001moviespc, and also look for the podcast Facebook page. Finally, if you've been enjoying what you've been hearing, please leave some positive feedback on iTunes to get the word out. Thank you, and see you next time.